You might remember that earlier in the year we got a preview, a sneak peek at the upcoming new Nissan Qashqai. Well, now it's here in the metal and in full, so we're able to drive it to see whether the revisions that Nissan has made to its latest and greatest crossover have worked. So let's get in, find out what this car's like, and see if it can live up to the reputation set by its very successful predecessor. The look of the new Nissan Qashqai represents a real evolution of the appearance of its predecessor. This is most noticeable at the front end, where you'll see a larger grille and new split style headlights, which really do help to give it a futuristic look. Around the back, we've got the now de facto Qashqai badging, which we've seen on so many other cars at the moment, and we've also got bigger, larger and more intricate alloy wheels, helping to give it a more premium appearance. The cabin of the old Qashqai was starting to show its age, which is why Nissan has really revamped the interior of this new one. The material quality is still a little bit hit and miss. This plastic material in the middle isn't great, and this here is a bit scratchy. But overall, we've got a real lift in that quality feel of the materials. We've got a nice leather trimmed section up here. The steering wheel is leather trimmed and that feels great. And up here we've got some other padded sections, and it just elevates the overall feeling of the cabin. Now, of course, this is a far more technologically advanced car than before, so we've got a digital display up front and we've got a larger infotainment screen in the middle. Now, though the implementation of both those is great, and it does help to improve the overall feel of the technology that you get in this car, the execution is slightly strange. The screen works really well, but the satellite navigation system isn't that detailed. And likewise, the virtual dials that you've got in front of you are great, but the fonts they've used feel a little bit dated, so it's almost like they got halfway there. It really is nitpicking though, and it's great to see that they've included physical controls for the heating and ventilation, which are far easier to use when you're on the move than ones located within the screen itself. Step into the back seats of the Qashqai via these new doors which open wider than before, and you'll find yourself sat with a good degree of knee room and plenty of headroom. The seat is in my position. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of space. We've got two charging ports here too. We've got a regular USB and a USB-C, and in the middle there's a small armrest with two little cup holders. You're not going to get big drinks in there. There is a transmission tunnel in the middle, so whoever sat there is going to find themselves a little more cramped than the people either side, but there's actually quite a lot of shoulder room, so even if you are sat three abreast, I don't think it's going to feel too cozy. Overall, it's a really nice, usable space with plenty of storage, and it just feels comfortable and well put together. When it comes to practicality, the new Qashqai does even better than its already quite practical predecessor. It offers 504 litres of boot space, and that's an increase on 74 litres compared to the car it replaces. It's also got a clever split level boot design, which allows you to tailor the way the boot sits according to what it is that you want to put in there. So the new Nissan Qashqai, we're finally behind the wheel. So what have we got to play with? Well, we've got a 1.3 litre turbocharged petrol engine under the bonnet, producing 156 brake horsepower and sending its power to the front wheels through a 6-speed manual gearbox in this car, though you can also get an automatic. Now, Nissan claims that 0 to 60 miles an hour will be dispatched in just under 9.5 seconds, which is more than respectable for a car of this type. Now, the big news, of course, is that this engine is fitted with mild hybrid assistance for the first time. And what that does is store up some of the energy you would otherwise lose when coasting and when braking, and it harnesses and it stores it to use for small little bursts of acceleration where it can add a small amount of torque, or for filling in the gaps in the torque curve itself. Efficiency wise, you should be seeing somewhere in the mid-40s when it comes to MPG, and then in terms of CO2 emissions, we're talking 146 grams per kilometre. So it's not ultra clean, but it's just about where you'd expect it to be in the market. Now, Nissan has brought a host of revisions to this new Qashqai, which it hopes will make it easier and more comfortable to drive without being any less involving than the previous generation. So the steering rack has been changed, it's been sharpened, and the gear ratio has been dropped so that you get a slightly more responsive feel to it. And in practice, it certainly feels that way. It's got nice direct steering. The steering weight is good too. And though there's not an awful lot of feel coming through from the front wheels, it's not the sort of car where you're really looking for it in earnest. But it does mean that you can pilot this car quite accurately and you can knit it through bends like these ones without any real trouble. The body control is excellent too. So when you are going through those bends, even quicker ones, the Qashqai is staying nice and level and flat, and that should certainly help to make it feel far less roly-poly when you're doing long distances. So it's going to be less tiring and it's going to be less sick-inducing for your passengers too. Now, the only byproduct of this is that the low-speed ride, so when you are travelling in 30 zones, when you're travelling through cities and towns, and when you're going just at slower speeds in general, the Qashqai does feel slightly unsettled. There's an edge to the ride, which means that over unbroken surfaces you do get somewhat disturbed in the cabin. At higher speeds, the refinement is excellent. The suspension really dials down, and what that means is that when you are doing those long trips or you're doing long motorway stints, this car is going to be perfectly comfortable. Now, Nissan has made a big deal about the fact that it's offering 20-inch wheels for the first time with the Qashqai, and sure, that's a premium feature, but it's one that I'd personally steer clear of because that's really going to exacerbate things when it comes to that ride. There is a 19-inch wheel available, and that's likely to be standard on pretty much everything but the top grade, and I think that's the best wheel choice to go for, as that'll just take the edge off the ride ever so slightly. What about the engine? Well, it's more than responsive enough for everyday driving. It's not hugely powerful, of course, and this is quite a big car that it's being asked to power along, but it does a good job of getting you up to speed, and though the low down grunt isn't entirely there, it's got more than enough pull at higher speeds so that you don't feel like you're left floundering when you need a quick burst of acceleration. And one of the good things about the Qashqai, and one of the reasons why it's sold in such huge numbers over the years, is because it feels like a big car from the inside, yet the external dimensions aren't too massive. And that's the same thing for this new generation. It's something that Nissan has been really careful about retaining too. So even though you feel like you're sat in a large and spacious SUV cabin, the external proportions mean that you don't have to worry about it too much when you're driving down narrow lanes. That's really helpful, not only for country driving when you're going down lanes, but also for when you're trying to park it, when you're trying to get up the screwball bits of multi-storey car parks with the high curbs, or even just when you're trying to go down a residential area with cars parked on both sides. You don't have to worry about clanging the wing mirrors. It's not an overly massive car. The overall visibility that you get from the Qashqai is pretty good. Up front, we've got slim pillars and big wing mirrors, which make your forward visibility really rather good. This is only contrasted by the slightly smaller rear screen, which is quite narrow in its proportions, but you do get a good amount of visibility out the back. Having said that, pillars at the rear are quite thick, so over the shoulder visibility is going to be diminished slightly. This 6-speed manual gearbox in this car, it's fine enough. The action is light. It's not particularly pleasant to interact with, but it's more than adequate and up to the job. The clutch is light too, so even in stop-start traffic, you're not going to be aching too much from having to creep forward continuously. That said, I do think that most people are going to go for the automatic version just because of the convenience of it. Also, an automatic gearbox really does elevate the kind of premium feeling that this Qashqai is going for, which is essentially a semi-autonomous cruise control which can now actively know when you're approaching a bend or approaching a change, I don't think that was it, a change in speed restrictions, and can adjust it accordingly. You can override it, of course. It's not like when it drives past the 30 limit, it's going to lock you to 30. You can override it with a press of the throttle. But it does actually really make things far less tiresome when you're driving just in the day-to-day. The lane departure system is by far one of the least intrusive that we've seen. Other versions from other manufacturers can be quite intrusive and go off just when you're nearing the line, but this one seems to have found a perfect middle ground. Will time in when you are going too far over the line, but will leave you to your own devices when you're going down lanes when realistically other ones are going off far more frequently. Is there any discernible influence from that mild hybrid system? No, not particularly. You'd be hard pressed to tell that this really had any electrical assistance whatsoever. For that, you're going to have to wait until the e-power version of the Qashqai arrives shortly. And what that does is effectively use an electric motor and batteries to power the front wheels rather than the engine. The engine itself acts almost as a generator for the electric motor and batteries. So the engine is never directly feeding power to the front wheels, it's only ever the electric motor. And that car will really change the driving experience that you get from the Qashqai. It'll be far closer to an EV in terms of response, and efficiency, of course, will take a big boost too. So if you are after a more electrified Qashqai, it could be worth hanging on until that one arrives. It's not hard to drive, it's quite easy to thread through a variety of different lanes and roads, and it calms down and it feels refined at speed too. Sure, this engine can get a little bit vocal when you ask more of it, but during everyday driving it's perfectly fine. The seats in this car are very nice too. They're not overly bolstered, so they don't feel like they're hugging you in too much, but they are nicely cushioned and supportive enough in all the right places that they feel like they are going to be more than comfortable over long distances. These seats also feature a massage function, but it feels it's a little bit of an afterthought. It's a bit like someone is sat too close to the back of you on a plane and they're kneeing your seat. So I'd be tempted to leave that box unticked unless you're really desperate for that experience. This new Qashqai feels like a fitting replacement to its ever popular predecessor. It's larger, it's more practical, and it feels far more premium inside than before. And those were key areas where the Qashqai really needed to improve. What's more, this 1.3 litre engine that we've got under the bonnet of this car is clean and refined, and it does help to elevate that overall premium feeling that people are looking for when they buy a car of this type. Certainly the crossover segment has swelled since the Qashqai first arrived, but this latest generation ensures that it's able to keep up with its key rivals. Thank you for watching this Motors.co.uk new car review on the Nissan Qashqai. And if you'd like to watch some other videos on some of this car's key rivals, then follow the links coming up next. And while you're here, please remember to give us a like if you like this video. Leave us a comment below to let us know what you think of the new Nissan Qashqai. And don't forget to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel, hitting that bell icon so you're notified each and every time we upload a new video.